degree of activation of their motor resonance nicely correlate with their own motor experience. So it is a matter of degree. So basically, the message of this series of experiments is that you resonate the more you are somehow congruent in terms of motor expertise, of motor experience with what you see, which means that you can. So that's interesting also for art appreciation from an educational point of view. The more you have children play with artworks and literally do things with their hand, the more you select an eye which become more and more focused and tuned to that particular way of expression, which we name art. So it's a dynamic process. It's not a Pavlovian reflex.
I've spoken to someone who's tetraplegic, unable to move, who says they cannot look at football matches anymore because it's just showing them what they can't do and they can't simulate. But I've also spoken to some tetraplegics who say, I love to go to football, I can't move at all, but I love to see others doing it.
Well, you see, there were experiments done on congenitally limb deficient patients, an experiment done by Christian Casers. So these people were born without arms, but they develop incredible motor skill with their foot. So they can shake your hand with the foot, they can paint, they can write, typewrite, whatever. So when they see a grasping hand, they map it on the motor program of their foot. So even if you are deprived of the capability of executing any kind of movement, you still have motor representation in your premotor cortex, which are active. And indeed, for example, Brugger in Zurich has shown that when this lady who was also congenitally limb deficient entertained phantom limb sensation, she was brain scanned, and what they found is that when she entertained the sensation of moving a limb she never had, she was activating specifically the premotor cortex. So I think there are innate motor programs which are sitting there, no matter if people were capable to develop the proper body appendage, that those programs are in charge to govern and to have it moving.
Sorry, Riccardo Manzotti want to say something, and then as well, we are speaking about education, and here we have Ruggero Poi, who is working with Michelangelo Pistoletto, and he's working with education in the Città dell'Arte, the creation he did. But no, listen to Riccardo Manzotti.
Okay. Riccardo Manzotti, Psychology of Art, Milan. Well, just a quick observation and a question to Vittorio and David. Well, the quick observation is the following. Art does not take place in a void, and one of the background of art is the model of the subject, is the model of the self. And neuroscience, in this respect, is not neutral, because it's changing our view, our worldview about what we are. And in this sense, neuroscience nowadays is also changing art, because it's changing the image that we have of what is a mind, what is a subject, what is a human being. And this, I think, is one of the reasons why people are worried about neuroscience nowadays, because nowadays neuroscience is sort of invading a field which was traditionally left outside of the scope of science, which is the mind, which is consciousness. I mean, there's no need to be shy. All the neuroscientists here have been involved with a theory about what consciousness is. And this is changing the rules. It's changing, more or less. But in one way or another, I mean, everyone has to said something about that. So in a way, neuroscience is sort of blurring the boundary between humanities in a way which has never happened before. And
in Tucson, Arizona, 1998, so it's already 11 years ago, people got really upset because I dare to say that I consider cognitive neuroscience as part of the humanities. And many colleagues of mine quit saying hello after that.
Right.
They thought
So
it was
I want yeah, that's it. And the question, not to steal too much time to the other people, just a question to you, is the following. I mean, in many cases, I think there was a confusion between the means used by art or used in order to achieve aesthetic experience and aesthetic experience in itself. Just let me make an example. For example, beauty. Beauty is a means that can be used in order to achieve aesthetic experience, but it's not aesthetic experience in itself. In the same way, all the other cognitive and perceptual capabilities can be used as a mean to achieve aesthetic experience, but they are not aesthetic experience in itself. So my question regarding your work is whether maybe the same could be said about embodiment. So you are interpreting art or aesthetic experience on the basis of, for example, embodiment, the mirror neuron system, and so on. But is that a means in order to achieve one more means in order to achieve aesthetic experience, or are you suggesting that somehow is more essential to aesthetic experience in itself?
Well, I give my answer and then turn it to Dave. I would claim that we are bodily selves, first of all. So our nature of bodily self naturally conditions and constrains all of our possibility to entertain any perception, or you may call it representation, of the world in which we are immersed, and aesthetic experience is part of that. So I would say that you can transcend, perhaps, your bodily nature, but it's inescapable that every time you are involved with anything, you do it from a bodily perspective. I prefer to use the term bodily because embodied may suggest that there is a preconceived self that then somehow magically is incarnated, embodied into the triviality of the flesh, while I see it the other way around. So we are bodily self. So yes, I think I would say it is a constant and universal ingredient of aesthetic experience. Aesthetic not in the sense of beauty, but in the original sense of aesthesis. So anytime we relate to artworks, we activate our aesthesis. Yes.
Yes, if I could just add something. I want to clarify two possible misunderstandings between the questioners and Vittoria, although we are on the same track, and also your question, which relates. Just to answer your question about embodiment or bodily responses, and what was the other possibility that you offered? Okay, mirror stuff. This is a question that comes from the way one views the history of science, and perhaps the most modest way of responding to you would be to say these are the best available tools in our opinion that we have at the moment. I want to just address Christine's question, because I realize there was a misunderstanding which arose from the notion of cognitive, in which you two differed. I think Christine was trying to say something which was actually really interesting, although Vittoria is right to say that both of us have striven for years to suggest that the old kinds of formalism have had their day. But you were trying also to suggest that someone like Jeff Wall, for him, I mean, this was your claim, the meaning, whatever we understand by meaning, but just let's use that provision, the meaning of the work comes from, in fact, I think you were saying this, some kind of intellectual construction that he puts on the work rather than the bodily involvement. And I think, so this was so you were in a way returning to the old kinds of formalism. And I think the way that I believe Vittoria would like to respond to you is to say that would be to say that well, this may be the case, but we actually believe that it's a commitment of ours, that part of the involvement that we have with these works, despite what the artist may say, is a kind of bodily involvement. That's how he gets us in. For example, one of the really good areas in neuroscience over the last 10 years, or 20 years now, I suppose, has been the study of attention. When we go into a room and we see a Jeff Wall, or we see a work by Pei, what is it about the work that gets our attention? I mean, I wrote The Power of Images without once referring to aesthetics. I've just been forced to use the word aesthetics because it's a kind of convenient hook for ways in which we get engaged with what we see out there, whether it's nature, whether it's work of art. But there is a question about, you go into a room full of pictures or sculptures or even a work by Bruce Nauman, because certainly we intend to include, I would like to include performance art, so on, other forms. What is it that grabs our attention? And I think this is something that really we could be helped with from you guys, from the neurosciences, and it's a question which we need to ask ourselves. It's an important element in our engagement with the artistic world.
Yeah, that's precisely what I think too.
Okay, now I'm sorry, but we have to pass to the third session. But
We make 5 minutes break.
we can drink all the prosecco.
I want to make some remarks. Some remarks about what I heard before. I think David Friedberg expresses one of my wish that would be to deepen exactly what we mean about art and what it means for neurosciences, because I think we reach a point in our discussion where we touches the question of the meaning of a work of art. That is something very difficult to define, actually. It's difficult to define still now what art is. It's a big issue for art critics or art historians to know what art is, especially because art is some human activity that evolves all the time. So we are not really sure about what we talk about. Is it silex, prehistorian silex, or is it Renaissance painting, or is it the modernist tradition of painting or performances? So I think art can also help us to redefine what is an aesthetic experience or the experience of the work of art, in the sense that neurosciences have new challenges then, when we consider these new forms. And that's also why I wanted to have here Davide Balula, because it's very symptomatic of a new generation, a generation that is not so much interested in contemplation. It's not about dealing with one object in front of you, 2 or 3 dimensional, but it's about an experience that can involve many senses. But beyond senses, I would say that for me, the work of art is not only about representing the real, it's about adding some to the real. It's about adding a new reality. And this addition to the real makes you look at the real in a different way somehow. And so the work of art for me is more something that I would call a fiction with this idea of plurivocité, of many meanings that are open, and not only what we discussed before last year about ambiguity, you remember? This plurivocité is one of the essence of the art of work that cannot be reduced to any neuroscientist explanation. It goes to the field of fiction, and the fiction is this space of creativity that belongs to an artist and that escaped somehow to our discussions.
Except that fiction is brain reality.
Yeah, I totally agree, but it goes beyond some of our. But I think it's very important to open our definition of art to continue our research.
Hello. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, everybody. I think I have short time. I try to show some works here. It's nice. I actually put this one just because, not because, but it's like it happened that it's pretty linked to what you just said. So about this reality and what we can call art or not, or just like also this experience. So this is just like an intervention at the entrance of a museum where I added an eye washer. So some of you probably know what's for. It's actually just like to wash one's eyes. So it was the